Thank you very much, and good evening, the Honorable Pickering and staff and so on. First of all, I must say I must commend the Minister because he has said that he is going to respect the environment of the Virgin Islands as much as possible. I think that's a very good statement, and I commend him for that. Secondly, when we are considering this type of development, sometimes we have a lot of options to consider. One of the options that was considered was the possibility of having larger aircraft coming to Puerto Rico and so on, and then we will be able to have an industry, so to speak. We have our own airline, have our own pilots, have our own stewardesses. You might have employment for 40 or 50 people with local airlines. That was one option. These other options we are now considering, I hope they're based on some type of statistics. For example, we might say, well, we have 3 or 4 airlines coming in. They're going to bring in maybe 400 passengers a month or whatever. I'm just saying raw figures a month. And we should have these statistics in order that we should go ahead and make the type of expansion. I know expansion is needed, but the type of expansion should be determined in some way by the statistics that are available. Because we may end up in a situation where we are proposing that these airlines will bring in 400 passengers per month, roughly, and then they might end up bringing maybe 200. And so on. These are things we have to consider. Then we have to consider also that we are now in an economical recession. All of these things we have to consider. But generally, the statistics should guide us in what we're going to do. Because I'm looking at the options there, and I must say they're quite explanatory. I must congratulate Mr. Denniston and those for the type of presentation to me. But I'd like us to base what you're going to do as much as possible on facts. And I think if we do this, it's going to be better for all of us in the long run. It'll be better for expenditure and so on. And then you say it's a work in progress, but I do hope that at some other point in time when some of the needs assessment and so are completed, that we'll have another meeting and we can be updated on some of the final information, because we are in the Virgin Islands Environmental Council are very concerned about the environment, and we are also will support you as you minimize the impact on the environment. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Pickering. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to say I give this government 1,000 support for this project. I vote for number 6. It's the best option. Mr. Fraser, you miss one important advantage to the folks who sleep on boats, live on boats, use Trailers Bay as a harbor. From my view, from this position, it would seem it would create more of a stable and safer dockage environment for boaters who are in that area. The only thing I would suggest to the plan, if it comes too close to the quay on the right, widen the quay. If it comes too close and on the left side where you would start the extension, there should be a tunnel, a passageway for water to continue to flow in and out. That's the only thing I would add to that. Other than that, I think number 6 is great. What I also want to say is that far too long in this country, we have allowed special interests, outsiders, I'm going to be blunt with it, outsiders to continue to dictate how we move forward in this country. It needs to stop, and it should stop now, and I applaud the minister and this government for taking that bold stand. I want to say to my good friend back there, this ain't something that just started. The minister or Mr. Fraser made it clear that the study was undertaken years ago. So all the consideration and all the concern are one by one being addressed. And the fact that you have come up with 6 different options, it also says that you're considering all of those questions and concerns. So we can't now sit back here and continue to say that we are advocating to utilize St. Thomas and St. Croix. If you think that's the best option, you should move there. Move there where you can have better access to your homeland where you come from, because that's what better suits you. The country is moving. It is all of us going to benefit. All of us who sit here who are from England, from Canada, from Africa, from America, you're the one who's going to benefit most. We don't have anywhere to go. You're the one that's going to utilize this same extension in this airport. So we got to stop this nonsense about what going to happen in the future. What's going to happen is the country going to continue to grow. It's going to grow economically, socially. It's going to grow in every respect. And it means that we have to be, like Dr. Pickering said, we got to be in charge of our own security. This is, to me, is a security issue. I can't sit back and depend on Puerto Rico. I can't sit back and depend on St. Thomas or St. Croix, or even St. Martin. No. St. Lucia a few years ago decided, since they already foresee or forecast that what was going to happen in Puerto Rico, they went to American Airlines and said, give us a direct flight into a big airport. And it's, guess what? It has benefited their tourism sector tremendously. It has created more jobs and more opportunity for the people that live and dwell in the island, and for the people who have committed to making that island safer and better and more for everyone. So, Dr. Pickering, I applaud you. Keep going. This is an effort. I agree with your approach. It's going to be done. It's just how we're going to get it done. And for anyone who's concerned about how we're going to pay for it, I heard in the House the other day, Social Security got $400 million. This only costs $70. Take $5 out the top and pay back Social Security.
Dr. Pickering, I've just got a couple of quick questions, hopefully. First, how long is the projected expansion, assuming number 6 is gone for? How long will it take? And, sorry. How long will the expansion take for option 6, and will the flights be able to land normally in the meantime? And secondly, whether the expansion will take any money away from the infrastructure developments and repairs that need to be undertaken normally in the BVI, because obviously the tourism product is the BVI, and if the infrastructure isn't there, people won't want to come. So those are the 2 questions.
The first 2 questions about how long from you start physical work to completion, the timeline I hear is anywhere between 18 and 24 months. That's the timeline I hear. That's outside of my, don't quote me and say that's what it will take. I don't have the expertise. That's what I've heard. The second question with respect to how will it be financed, it can only be financed by loan funds. The government doesn't have that kind of money to put into any development. But I will hasten to add that based on revenue projections that the new airport will be able to generate, we expect that the airport will be able to pay for its own development. No, I didn't hear you, sorry.
The main question was whether the rest of the infrastructure would suffer or not with the outlay that's going to have to be made for the airport. So the 30 million, or in stages, the 10 million, will that come directly from the funds that would otherwise repair the roads, or how is it going to be? I appreciate that it will be paid back eventually.
No, we don't. You know, the initial capitalization for consultancies, of course, will be borne by government, but we don't expect that we will be taking money from the consolidated fund from central government to put into the airport. I may tell you that, in fact, there is no shortage of interest in financing this project. Almost on a daily basis, I get calls from interested parties. Every week I have a meeting scheduled with some party who wants to just register their interest in the possibilities of financing the development. They see the BVI as a a great investment, and the potential for this airport has been something tremendous. So there's no shortage of interest in terms of the financing and financing availability. Where we eventually go, that's still a work in progress.
Good evening. It's true that tourism depends on an airlift, but it's also true that tourists need something to come to. And sovereignty is also the unique beauty of the BVI. The charter industry consists of over 750 yachts. That's a capacity of over 5,000 people a day. It brings in well over 9 figures in revenue annually, which is equivalent to an awful lot of hotels and more than the cruise ship industry. It's often overlooked because it's less visible than shoreside installations. But to the charter yacht industry, Trellis Bay and the Marina Key area are crucial. Sailors will understand that. They aren't simply anchorages and pickup spots and drop-off spots. They are also anchorages that lie between Virgin Gorda and Anegada to the east and the northeast, and Jost Van Dyke and Tortola and the islands of the Francis Drake Channel. Not all sailors that come here are willing to sail all day or are competent to do it. And these islands are a very, very important stop. To that end, has a hydrological survey been done that will prove that Trellis Bay will not become a cesspool? What is the distance in option 6 between Bellamy Key and the runway, and between the rocks at the end of Spratt Point and the runway? It's important that there be access to both sides of Trellis Bay, because on the west side, a lot of ferries leave, and it would be disastrous to have them plowing through the mooring field on the east side.
I got you. I
have a couple of other points.
Just let me answer. I don't want you to go too far. Let me answer some of them and you can answer the rest. And I stand up so I could answer you, because I want to make this point and make it abundantly clear. Okay? This government will do nothing to destroy Trellis Bay. I want to make that abundantly clear, sir. I grew up in Trellis Bay. My father used to fix boat on the slip yard in the late 60s at Trellis Bay where the conch shell was. I grew up there. You understand? It is a place that I treasure myself. When it comes to the ecosystem of the whole Beef Island, Trellis Bay, Commander area, my father used to work on Commander Marina Key in the days of the Bathons, Little Mike and Big Mike. You ain't talking to somebody who just come, and somebody who understands the tourism product that we are selling, understand it clearly. We understand that one of the big problems that it faces is what is the potential impact on Trellis Bay. Krauss Manning understands that. Some of the proposals are one, to dig a trench leading from Trellis Bay parallel to the airport all the way to Welby. Parallel to the airport, a trench that allows the water to flow. The silt that is removed will be used for filling the area that you need to fill. Secondly, the option of putting trenches under the extension. And we are told that one of the possible problems with that is that silt develops very rapidly. So that may not be a feasible option. Thirdly, the possibility of putting a bridge. And there's a brilliant idea about putting that bridge under where you could do a nighttime dive, make it an artificial reef, and it could become a snorkeling attraction. There's a beautiful concept out there that we could do. The costs, however, are prohibitive. We understand that. We have two individuals who are oceanographers, one of whom is going to consult directly with me as the minister to give me impact on what Krauss Manning is going to deliver to me and critique what Krauss Manning is going to give to me with respect to coral flows. Because we understand that the big problem is that if you don't take attention to the current flows, you could affect Long Bay Beach because of the silt that will accumulate inside Trinidad Bay, and the flow and the sand will affect Trinidad Bay down there. We understand all of that. So we have an oceanographer that's going to give me information different and separate from what I was going to do. We understand all of that. So I want to make myself and you and everybody listening abundant clear. We understand the major issue. We understand the problems right there at Spratt Point. It gets a little shallow when you get out there. We understand that there are mitigating factors that we will take into consideration. There's also the possibility of putting a trench inward from Spratt Point to go straight out towards Virgin Gorda. The question of whether what the flow is going to do to Trinidad. We understand all of that. We're not going to make any decisions going forward with all the necessary expertise and advice as to exactly what is right, what is wrong, what should be, what shouldn't be, how it should be, and how it shouldn't be. I just want to make myself abundantly clear on that.
I understand, and I like that answer. But will the marine industry be allowed to comment, and will we be consulted?
You certainly will be consulted.
Great.
And I will be contacting you and also Mr. Watts from the Marine Association.
Thank you.
Dr. Pickering, Deputy Mayor, I congratulate you for your courage to have seen this issue as a necessary one that must happen. Because we've gotten to this point. Time does not stop, it continues. And development for us. And I believe that your aim is to try to strike the best balance you can, so that not just local people, but people that come and live in mountains as residents, and also tourists will be able to enjoy this project that's ongoing. Thank you for having this meeting so that we can comment on it. As I look at the two pictures on the screen, I recognize that number 6 brings us very close to Bill McKee, and the other one takes us farther away. I understand that we're trying to save the environment as much as possible. But I know that on this earth, that God gave man dominion over the earth. Therefore, they must manage it the best way so that it can benefit humans. And I was wondering if there couldn't be another option that will cause it to go a little further, not the top one, but the bottom one, a little further to the north. Because I see Trailers Bay as a very important area in the BVI that benefit the country. So I want to suggest a balance that would please as many people as possible. But I'm here to say that the extension is a must. No doubt about that. It's going to happen. It must happen. We've gotten to a point where we need it. So anyone who thinks that it's not going to happen, they have another thought coming. It's going to happen. It's a matter of how we do it. And I respect you that this is an ongoing something and nothing is already cast in stone. But we're going to do it. Amen? We're going to do it. but how it's done is what really matters. So I would say that it is better to please the majority of the people doing the right thing than to please the majority of the people doing the wrong thing. So let's do it, and let's do it right. Thank you very much.
You raised a very important and interesting issue about the possibility of linking the airport to the west. There's a limitation to how far back that can come. And it has specifically to do with the approach that the aircraft have to take. Remember, Mr. Dennison was pointing out that even with the airport as it is now for the bigger aircraft, they will have to circle straight over around Normal Island and come around to curve in, because the big planes can't come over the hill. And so the problem is if you extend too far to the west, you're getting too close to the hill at Chapel Hill, and that will create its own problem. So it's, the recommendation is a mere 500 feet addition to the western end. We can't do much more than that without creating additional problems.
I believe I may have been misunderstood. I was talking about the eastern part of the runway, not the western part. I was figuring that the bottom picture, right, that area number 6, is a bit too close to the, the Trailers Bay Lagoon area. I was wondering if there couldn't be an option that take it a little further over to the north, because the north one, the one that goes to the north,
You're talking about realignment of the airport.
Everything is possible
right.
in this life.
The two problems with realigning the airport are, number one, the moment you start talking about realignment in the airport, the costs go up exponentially, because that's building a completely new airport. The slightest variation in the realignment of the airport means a completely new runway.
Okay.
The second problem with that is that you then impinge on Welby, on the western end. And for the most part, any reorientation or realignment of the airport almost literally destroys Welby on the western end. Okay. So okay. That's why we have chosen to stay with the alignment as it is, bearing in mind those factors.
Well, I'm glad what I said, because of what I said, I heard what you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Pickering, for calling this meeting this evening. I just want to remind people that it's only just 12 years since the development of the current airport started, and there were very many issues that arose then because the original, before it started construction, things were rushed. There was no environmental impact assessment available for the developers to see it. Now we have learnt our lessons in that, but some of the other lessons that we learnt from that airport need to be taken into account, and I have a couple of questions regarding that. One of the big issues when the current airport was finished was the flight height exclusion zone, which was the zone that came out in a cone shape from the end of the runway. And initially, the people in Trellis Bay, or the tourist industry, were told that boats that were over 50 feet off the water could not enter Trellis Bay. Now, that basically most of the charter boats, the sailboats that are entering Trellis Bay are more than 60 feet off the water. That means that the top of the mast is more than 60 feet off the water. Now, if you look at the current expansion on the, I guess that's number 6 on the bottom one, then what will be the flight height exclusion zone? Where will that extend there, and where the entrance is right by the Spratt Rock into Trellis Bay by the Cardinal Buoy that marks the current entrance, would seem to me there's going to be a real problem with the exclusion zone, which runs another, I don't know how many feet, but would go way up before a boat that is the height that that most of the boats are that enter Trellis Bay will be able to come in. So how are they going to be able to enter the bay?
Okay, you probably can't see from all the way in the back, but there is a broken blue line right across this area, comes around, goes around this area, and then it comes back right there. That line actually, that will not be filled in, but that is the line where there's off limits for boat in terms of anchoring, no boat anchoring in that particular area. In terms of entering, your second part of your question with entering Trellis Bay, I think you've heard from the minister before, we have this area there, considerations after the environmental impact is completed, whether there will be dredging of this particular area or dredging across the Spratt Point area. All that will be taken into consideration with the environmentalists, and we'll decide on the best way forward at that time.
Well, if that's the case, then why is there an existing flight height exclusion zone, which means that boats have to enter on the very eastern end of Trellis Bay, and the yellow buoys that were put in by the BVI Airports Authority, I think, were where you weren't meant to be with a vessel because it could affect the landing of aircraft, which is particularly pertinent when aircraft come to land from the east when the wind is from the south or there's no wind, or if an aircraft is taking off very heavy and can't lift, then you can't have masts in the way. And if there's a flight height exclusion zone now, then I would see it running out several hundred feet. It would run out the distance, whatever it is, from the end of the current runway to Spratt Point further east. The same distance that the existing flight height exclusion zone is currently will have to be extended further out.
Your point and your question is obviously a very technical one, because I myself don't understand half of the details. But that's why we employ experts, you know, who will tell us exactly, because remember Mr. Denniston showed earlier that the International Air Traffic Association, IATA, will also be involved in the technical issues that will be guided the way we do the development. So those issues are very technical, will also be taken into consideration at a much more detailed level.
All right, we're getting ready to wind up. A few more questions.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Pickering, for holding this meeting. I think it's an excellent effort and very important, in fact, crucial to the future of the BVI. Just on that finer point of the mast height restriction zone, I would dispute that it's that technical. It's a basic requirement for the end of a runway that boats shouldn't be anywhere near there. And I have been affected, and not me personally, but all of Trellis Bay have been affected by the existence of the current mast height restriction zone, which unfortunately has been, and fortunately for the safety of the aircraft, unfortunately for Trellis Bay, has become a major aspect in the existing situation of reducing traffic to Trellis Bay. I spend every day nearly of my life attracting business to Trellis Bay, because a lot of the manuals, the cruising guides, discourage people to visit Trellis Bay already because of the difficulty of the mast height restriction zones. There's, it says in the guidebooks that you're supposed to contact the tower before entering Trellis Bay or before crossing that area. There have been yellow buoys that are put out. They have washed away. It's all become a bit of a sort of a blurry mess, but basically many boats are already deferred from Trellis Bay. So I suspect strongly that the option 6 will make it extremely difficult to enter Trellis Bay with a mast vessel, which is fundamental to our business. It's, as the Charter League leader suggested is a very great loss for the charter industry, and it doesn't just affect Trellis Bay, it's going to affect Kamino residents, it's going to affect Scrub Islands, operational ability and Marina Key, and it will have a major impact on the whole area. I thought the very first question this evening was actually one of the most important ones. It was the big picture question. What is this doing for the whole of the BVI? It's obviously going to change our status on the sort of world map, let's say, and I am a person that believes in the sort of sovereignty. I wish we could have more sovereignty, but I think I'm fearful that the done deal that we are being presented with is quite possibly premature. I hope it's not to be a stillbirth, in fact. I fear that this is a positive criticism, Dr. Pickering. I hope you take it constructively, but I suspect and I sort of feel that there's a certain degree of political gambling going on here. And it is a major infrastructural project that possibly we need. But will it really affect the mass of the people who really don't have a lot to do with the tourist economy? I'm surmising that maybe over 70% of the tourist economy is in the expatriate hands. And I lament that fact. I think the BV Islanders should be more involved in our own industry, our own destiny. And, but I also wondering whether this is going to help the future generations that are at this point marginalized and are not in part of the system or this part of our economy. And I'm fearful that there may be a backlash on two sides here. There could be a backlash from the population that are currently excluded from the tourist economy and will be excluded in a future tourist economy. And there could well be a backlash amongst our tourists who have developed a passion for the BVI. There's a devotion, in fact, amongst many, many return visitors to the BVI, that this kind of infrastructural development is something of a slap in the face to them. They have such feelings and such a love for our country as we do. And this kind of thing raises very, very serious questions on which way we go. I agree that we're in a fork. We are in a fork in the road. And quite possibly, we should consider at this point being more prudent, more reserved, and more cautious. I haven't heard this government's position on global warming, for example, climate change. These are serious issues that I think most people in this room are aware of as a major aspect of the next 25 years of our existence. Plus, this hasn't been raised in this discussion. You know, we're already in a very fragile infrastructural position. The roads are in crisis. We all agree. Hopefully we'll get some money. The sewage is in crisis. Hopefully we'll get some money to fix it. But this is perhaps a step beyond. And I am concerned, and I hope that we can all have a really deep think about the long-term value of what we're doing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Willem. I've been coming here as a charter sailor since 1983, and I love your people and your islands. It's a wonderful place. I come here, I spend a lot of money here. Many people do, as it's been recognized, that people that love the boat, this is the place to come in the world. I've been in the Mediterranean. I would come here anytime, especially because it's so nice. I have mixed feelings. You've got to find a solution. I'm really happy that you're going to attend to some of these issues that have been brought up, I'm sure, by your own studies and also tonight. Like the gentleman that spoke earlier, I'm concerned about Trellis Bay. It happens to be my favorite place to go to anchor. When I go there, I spend money in the bay. I spent $600 in the grocery store when we arrived 10 days ago. We got another 10 days to go to be here. We've been 3 times to the grocery store in Trellis Bay. I've eaten 4 times at the Loose Mongoose. Trellis Bay is really special. So I hope you'll do your best to save it for the boating industry and all the other good people that really love that bay and recognize its importance. The BVI has wonderful, wonderful places, but it's not infinite, and I'm just afraid we could really destroy it if we're not careful. So thank you for taking the time to be careful. Thank you.
Yes, good evening all. Dr. Pickering. I came a bit late for the earlier discussion, but I want to say that, like you, I've spent a significant part of my growing up in the eastern end of the island, including Trellis Bay area, and with family development on Beef Island of an agricultural nature. Now, as someone who in fact has spent time studying development of territories, small territories like our own, and the issues facing us, obviously we have to take a leaf out of the book of other countries nearby who have made decisions in respect to airport development. I was in the USVI during the time when they were planning some of the expansion for the airport in St. Thomas. There was a trade-off decision that had to be made between St. Croix and the airport in St. Thomas. Pywanski made a decision, a political decision, to expand St. Thomas Airport. The cost of expansion was over $1 million a foot for the western end of the airport. Traffic and all the other required stuff obviously had to be taken into consideration, the impact on the bay and other things. Beef Island obviously is a sensitive area. You had the case of the development of the hotel, which came to the fore and had the concerns expressed in the court to defend the impact on the reserved areas. Now, in terms of government's planning for the expansion of the territory, this has always been an issue. How fast do we want to expand in terms of population development? How much constraint should we put on to expansion? When you get interest coming into your country, as has happened many years ago, when Bates came here, there were serious issues involved. One certain interest gets entrenched in your country. They're going to defend their interests to the exclusion, if necessary, of the interests of the indigenous people. And we have to face that fact. Right now, the tourism industry has literally gone in a direction which, in fact, has put a significant part of the investment structure in external hands. And if, in fact, we continue to go down the road where, in fact, the indigenous people in the country and the government can't make a decision because they have so many other opposing views every time they try to make a decision, we're going to end up with a slap in the face when the people of the country rise up and take action which may not be desirable. We have to be flexible in our view in respect to the decision-making which a country is required to undertake. Not because you have an interest in Trellis Bay, you're going to say, no, we don't want the expansion of the airport. Or because maybe in the case of Bates, they had 4/5 of Annigarden and had a significant part of the development of Road Town, Wikamski 1 and Wikamski 2. If they were allowed to carry on, where the interests of the indigenous people in the country were not taken into consideration, what would we have had in Tortola right now in respect of the indigenous people's involvement, even in the commerce of the country? These are serious issues. And when the minister stands up there and says, look, we're going to have a development in Beef Island, where we're contemplating doing so and so, but we're taking step at a time, we're studying the issue, and we're trying to make sure that, in fact, when we make the decision and push the button, we're doing the right thing. I agree with him, and I support him in that regard. Other persons who have interest, likewise, have to stop and listen. There are indigenous interests which must be respected. Even if you have investment interests, you still have to, there's a trade-off that has to be undertaken. And we must do it in a proper manner. I'm not going to say much because I came a bit late, but that's my comment. And I wish to continue to say I'm supporting the process, and I hope that it gets the best results.
All right. The minister will take one more question, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, well, good evening. I don't know if this is a question. I think I'm going to do like most people and make a couple of comments. First of all, let me say I appreciate the minister coming here and presenting us these proposals and the various choices. But more than that, I appreciate and admire his passion. I believe him when he says he's not going to do anything to affect the environment adversely. I have some idea about his connection with Beef Island, and also we know the whole story of what happened with the place on the other side of Beef Island. But what I really want to say is that when I look at this proposal in the context of the whole territory, I have serious doubts. Not whether we should do it, but we have to look at it in the light of what else we say that we have to do. And we're only talking about this one tonight. So yes, we have to do it, and we probably would want to go for option 4. I have feelings about, Trellis Bay, and so does the minister. And I hear all about the business about the mass and whatnot, and these are serious considerations. Even access to Virgin God. I mean, these are all serious considerations. But my concern is that the devil is in the details. We talk about environmental impact and mitigating these impacts. That's going to cost us money. We literally throwing a ton load of money in the sea. We have to consider that. And when all this analysis is done, I heard the minister saying that we forecast that the airport is going to be able to pay for itself. With all due respect, Minister, I have serious doubts. Very few airports in busy places pay for themselves. I tack on the sovereignty business and all the other little prestige things to that. And yes, we might be willing to allow it to lose some money. But how much money can we afford to let it lose? So, you know, I think when we get to the serious analysis, and I know, Mr. Minister, you're not going to do anything rash. I believe it might look a little different. And a lot of the people who jumping up tonight and saying, yes, go with it, go with it, go with it, I'm going to remind them that they were the ones jumping up and saying, let's go with it, because we just might not be able to go with it, at least not now. Thank you.
All right, there might be some more questions, and there's another meeting which the minister will tell you about. Minister?
Well, Mr. Smith, I want to tell you that I intend to prove you wrong. I want to take this opportunity to say thanks to all of you for taking the time out to come and share your views. Before I wrap up, I want to again acknowledge the presence of all my colleagues in the House of Assembly who are here. I want to acknowledge my former colleague, Honorable Flax, and my former colleague, Honorable Dancier Penn. Thanks for showing up this evening. Thanks to all of you who were courageous enough to share your views, your thoughts, and your ideas. As I said in the House of Assembly on Thursday, a project of this magnitude, I certainly would be very disappointed if there weren't interests, criticisms, and suggestions on the way forward. I want to again emphasize that the government has made a decision to move ahead with the development of the airport. Whether the airport turns out to be 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet, those details, those are questions that I cannot answer at this point in time. I want to again emphasize and re-emphasize that as the minister responsible for this subject and as the minister responsible at this point in time for the protection of our natural resources and the environment, that I will do nothing that would adversely impact the environment of this country. I want to assure you of that. We've come to a fork in the road where we've got to make decisions. These decisions cannot be left to be made for us. I was sharing with one of my friends the other day, I say, you might have been in a relationship for a while with a lady or a man, as the case may be, and you came to that point in your life where you had to make a decision, am I going to get married or not get married? You just had to make a decision. It wasn't something you could left up to choice. Either you came to a fork, it's either the relationship was going to finish or you were going to get married and the relationship were going to move forward. The BVI has come to a fork in the road. We've got to make some critical decisions. My colleague signed a memorandum, a heads-of-term agreement this afternoon with the Disney Group to move forward with the cruise ship pair development. You heard the statistics. We either do it or we don't. We've got to make decisions. Some of us put our families on the line and go out there and we take criticisms left, right, and center to run for elected office. And yeah, you think that running for elected office is an easy job? And yeah, you think it is, especially when you have children? You think it's something easy that you have to subject your family to people criticizing you every single day? You think it's something nice? You overwork, you're underpaid and underappreciated. There's nobody who runs for elected office that could tell you anything else. But we have to make decisions. I want you to understand that. But there's a process, and so we appreciate you coming to share. We will do our best to make sure that we keep the public as informed as we can do, and moving forward as we make the decision, so that no one will be able to say that they didn't know or we didn't tell them. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the members who serving at this point in time on the Airports Authority. All the members who are serving on the authority right now, can you stand and be recognized, please? All the sitting members of the Airport Authority, can you just stand and be recognized? Thank you very much. And we want to thank you for your service to the country. I want to thank the Krausman team for undertaking this job and to being with us this evening to share and help support the technical details that we'll have to contend with. There's another meeting planned for Thursday evening at the Cultural Center in Rotong. For those who couldn't come to this one, you can spread the word. Once again, we thank you very much. God bless you. God continue to bless these Virgin Islands. Good night.